All right, let's cut to the chase. We got the Dell XPS 13 here in all its flavors, almost all its flavors. Two full HD versions, one Lunar Lake, one Snapdragon X Elite, tandem OLED in the Snapdragon X Elite over here. So bottom line, what should you buy here? Well, battery life is going to be pretty phenomenal on these two full HD versions, LCD versions. They're non-touch, they're 120 hertz. This is a tandem OLED right here. This one is a touch display, multi-touch. It is 60 hertz, but it is absolutely stunning in terms of the deep blacks, the vibrant colors, and the overall vibrance of the display. It's also great for content creation. But if you need the longevity of these very good LCD panels, the bottom line is the battery life here on this one is 28 hours plus video playback, and then of course on this one 27 hours plus. So either way, if you go with Lunar Lake, if you go with Snapdragon full HD, non-touch, 120 hertz, you're going to get pretty phenomenal longevity when it comes to battery life. You're looking at about 12 hours on this one. Now, of course, it's not without its controversy. As you know, there is no physical function row. It has the zero lattice keyboard. It's got the Gorilla Glass haptic touchpad, of course, and no delineation when it comes to the touchpad. I actually like it. I think it's more than form over function here. I know a lot of people have been saying that form over function. I actually like these laptops. They're very portable, they're gorgeous looking, and they get the job done. Now, especially if you need that longevity, I would go with one of these right here because you're going to get phenomenal battery life. Performance on the Lunar Lake, obviously less cores means less performance. This is the Core Ultra 7 258V. That means you're getting 8 cores, 8 threads, no hyper-threading. The Snapdragon X Elite will have better single core, better multi-core, okay? So that is the difference. But where the Lunar Lake has a leg up is going to be graphics. The Intel Arc 140V on this one simply kicks the ass of the Adreno graphics. There's no doubt about it. They have it's probably a generation or two ahead of what these can produce in terms of graphics. So overall, I like the Lunar Lake a lot. I like its phenomenal battery life. I like the fact that you're getting overall very good performance for everyday tasks. And it's simply stunning to look at, light, thin, everything you want in a sleek, modern flagship. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, this is the Dell XPS 13, all new for 2024. Snapdragon versus the brand new Lunar Lake here for 2024. Coming up. Now, before we get to the unit itself, I just want to let everyone know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by Dell. I'm not being sponsored by Dell. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Dell is not getting copy approval. That means you're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. These units are on loan from Dell, and once this review is done, I'll be sending them back. Now, say what you will about the Dell XPS 13, but there's one thing that I think we all can agree on. This is one good-looking laptop. In fact, whether you get it in the platinum or in the graphite, you're going to get a beautiful, aesthetically looking laptop. And I will tell you this, every time I take it to a coffee shop, every time I take it to a meeting, when I bring it out into the public, people ask me, wow, that is really beautiful. And I think the fact that you're looking at the Gorilla Glass, the all-metal design here, and the overall aesthetics, this really is a beautiful looking laptop. And that is one thing I don't think you can take away from the designers of this laptop. I think they did a phenomenal job. Now, whether or not you like the capacitive row, whether or not you like the haptic touchpad without the delineation, whether you like the zero lattice keyboard, that's a personal subjective preference. So we'll keep it at that. But I will say this is one beautiful laptop, no doubt about it. All right, let's get a measurement of the weight with just the unit alone, 1.228 kilograms, and that would be 2 pounds, 11.3 ounces. That is just the laptop itself with the extension cord, with the USB-C cable, and with the compact 60-watt charger. You're looking at 3 pounds, 3.9 ounces, and that would be 1,472 grams or 1.472 kilograms for a total travel weight. So very travel friendly, no doubt about that. Now, so far, obviously, this is really good. You're seeing here the platinum version. It also comes in the graphite color, which is that darker gray color, which is really good. I don't have a preference. Sometimes I vacillate. Sometimes I like the platinum more. Sometimes I like the graphite. But the bottom line is they're both really stunning looking, I think. I think the design is really beautiful. Now, the build here is going to be top notch. There's very little, there's no give or flex in the chassis. So forget about that on the lid or anything like that. Very minimal screen wobble. So the design, the engineering that went into this is of the first rate. And I would say this, looks wise, there may not be a better laptop that is out there. In fact, it might be the best looking laptop, among the best, at least, that I've ever used. It's that stunning. All right, let's talk about the keyboard. And you're going to get the same keyboard no matter which version you choose, whether it be the Snapdragon, whether it be the Lunar Lake. You're going to get the same zero lattice keyboard. Now, looking at it, you might say, well, it has, very little throw, very little key travel. And I would say you're wrong. This is deceptively good. And typing out documents, emails, and the like has been pretty comfortable. And that's been a big surprise for me over the last year or so plus using this keyboard. Now, I know a lot of people are upset about the capacitive row. That's been a big bone of contention for a lot of people, especially programmers and those that need the physical function row, the physical escape key. I understand that. Programmers definitely need that. Developers need that, but you don't get that here. So this may not be the laptop for you. So just keep that in mind. Now, that being said, you do get a multi-stage backlight on this keyboard, and I thought it worked pretty well in terms of getting work done in a dark room or a dimly lit cabin, say in an airplane. Now, let's talk about the touchpad. It's a haptic touchpad. It's covered in Gorilla Glass, and it's a really good touchpad as far as the haptic engine, the overall feedback. It's been pretty good, doing all the gestures, scrolling, no complaints on that front. One thing I will say, there's no delineation of where the haptics begin and ends in terms of that touchpad, so some people are not crazy about that. I didn't have an issue. Memory muscle kicks in, you know where it works, you just don't have to look at it, and you get pretty used to it very quickly. And very little I/O, as you only get two USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 ports that are full function. They're one on each side of the unit. And there's no headphone jack, which is a big omission, no USB-A, no HDMI, no micro SD card reader or anything like that. It is pretty scarce when it comes to I/O. So if you need those missing ports, you'll have to get a dongle or some kind of hub adapter to use those ports. And again, very minimal ports here. No hub in the box, by the way. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have the different displays here. The only one I don't have is the QHD Plus display that they offer, but as far as the Full HD Plus 120 hertz display, we have that here on this Lunar Lake version, but I also have the tandem OLED with the 9345. That's running Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite, but it's the same tandem OLED display offered throughout the line. So we're able to get a nice comparison here side by side. And I would obviously say go with the OLED if you need the better color accuracy, the better coverage of the color gamut, the sharper, more vivid images that you're going to get on that OLED display. It's far superior, there's no doubt about it. But as far as the Full HD Plus display, it is a non-touch here as opposed to the touch you get on the OLED. And it is certainly good in its own right. Consuming media, watching Netflix, Amazon, YouTube have been very good. It also has a higher refresh rate, 120 hertz. That's going to give you a very smooth, very fluid experience. The tandem OLED is at 60 hertz, so just keep that in mind. But what you're going to really get in terms of a benefit going with the Full HD non-touch is, of course, extremely better battery life. You're seeing a big difference in terms of that battery life because you're going to push less pixels. There's less things to do. In terms of the OLED, you're going to use more power. There's no doubt about it. So going with the Full HD Plus gets you a lot of longevity when it comes to battery life. And a couple of other benefits you get with the Full HD LCD panel is you don't have to contend with any screen burn-in down the road that might plague an OLED display, and you don't have to worry about PWM or screen flickering that OLED uses. So there are some ancillary benefits you get going with that Full HD Plus LCD panel. And no matter which one you choose, they're all 16:10 aspect ratio. It's 13.4 inches. And the non-touch Full HD Plus, which we have here on that Lunar Lake, has a very nice anti-glare coating on it. So you don't get a lot of the glare and reflections you'd get with the more glossy OLED panel. So that is another benefit you get going with the Full HD Plus. And I think both bring something to the table here, so it just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for better battery life and that anti-reflective coating, go with that Full HD Plus LCD panel. But if you need the better coverage of the color gamut, you need the better color accuracy that the OLED brings, go with the one with the tandem OLED. There is no doubt about that. All right, so this is the Dell XPS 13. We're looking at a Full HD camera. This is the Lunar Lake version, by the way, and it's an IR camera just like all the others. What do you think about the video quality? What do you think about the audio quality? Let me know. So this is the front-facing camera on the Dell XPS 13, the 9345, running the Snapdragon X Elite processor. And this is a 1080p camera. It's an IR camera that allows you to log in with face recognition with Windows Hello. All right, let's talk about performance here. And this, of course, is running Intel's brand new processor, the Lunar Lake, the Intel Core Ultra 7 256V, 8 cores, 8 threads, and of course, no hyper-threading or anything like that. We lose that, of course, for more efficiency and better battery life, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Let's talk about single-core performance, which is improved over Meteor Lake, and multi-core performance here. Now, of course, expect less multi-core because you are getting less cores here. That makes sense, but in real world, everyday use, you're not going to see much of a difference, to be honest. Everyday tasks like Microsoft Office, email, web browsing the web, consuming media, all worked very well. There was no hiccups, no slowdowns, everything speedy and snappy. And one big thing here, you won't have any compatibility issues that you might encounter, say, with that Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite found in the XPS 139345. Now, where we are seeing a big increase year over year is in the graphics. The integrated ARC graphics here is, of course, an improvement over the Intel ARC graphics from last year. These are the Intel ARC 140V. And as you can see, better Time Spy, better Firestrike, and better Wildlife Extreme scores, showing this is a very capable integrated graphics solution. So if you're going to play games, definitely going to play with some settings. You're not going to play AAA titles on their highest setting, but you can get some very playable frame rates depending on which titles you choose and which settings you set it at. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, all right, what's the difference between the Lunar Lake and the Snapdragon XPS 13? Now, we have both of them here. So we have the Lunar Lake, which is an x86-based processor, so the compatibility issues will not be there that you might find with the Snapdragon X Elite version. So that's one big difference between the two. The other big difference, of course, is the Snapdragon will definitely have better single and multi-core performance, and that is because the Lunar Lake has less cores, so less performance. It just makes sense. But overall, in everyday real-world usage, I don't think most people will notice the difference. And the biggest difference, I think, is when it comes to the integrated graphics solution that each employ. Now, the Intel Arc 140V is much superior than the Adreno graphics that we find on the Snapdragon X Elite. They're not even the same league in a sense. So that's where I think the Lunar Lake has a big leg up over the Snapdragon X Elite counterpart. And when I ran the Time Spy stress test, it got a score of 91.8%. It's near the passing score of 97%, so maybe it detected a little bit of thermal throttling, but nothing to be overly concerned about. And out of all the Dell XPS 13s that I've looked at here, between the Lunar Lake and the Snapdragon X Elite, this has got to be one of the coolest one, the 9350, in terms of the surface temperatures, even under heavy load. That's pretty impressive. But I will say this, the Snapdragon X Elite never got overly hot either, and that same goes for the XPS 139340, although that was the hottest of the bunch. And we're definitely seeing an improvement when it comes to fan noise over the Meteor Lake, the 9340 from last year. This one is slightly quieter under heavy load, but when you're doing everyday tasks, the fans basically didn't come on. It's been pretty much silent for doing your Microsoft Office, email, web browsing. But when you're playing games, when you're pushing this under heavy load, never going above 44, 45 decibels. And while this is pretty quiet, it was not quite as quiet as those fans on the 9345 Snapdragon. That was extremely quiet. That was basically having a silent laptop there. So it's been pretty good in that regard. Now, let's take a peek at the internals, and nothing's really changed between the different units that they're offering depending on the chipset. They're all pretty much the same here. It looks exactly the same. And you're getting the same 55 watt-hour battery. You get the same two-fan cooling solution and the same M.2 2280 SSD. And as you can see, certainly fast enough reads and writes that are in this review unit running Lunar Lake. And of course, the RAM is integrated onto the chip with the Lunar Lake, so no upgradeability as far as the user is concerned. Now, this one is running the Core Ultra 7 256V, so that means you get 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it is, of course, running at the very fast 8533 megatransfers per second, so it's good to see that, and it is running in dual channel mode. Now, for those that need more RAM, Dell does offer a variant with the Core Ultra 7 258V that does have 32 gigabytes of RAM, also running at that very fast 8533 megatransfers per second. Now, when it comes to wireless, you're looking at killer Wi-Fi 7 along with a Bluetooth 5.4 combo card that is soldered into the motherboard, not upgradable by the user, but the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth are both working flawlessly. I've had no issue with either one, and it's good to see that Wi-Fi 7 there. All right, let's talk about the star of the show, and that, of course, would be battery life. And it doesn't matter which one you choose, you're going to get the same 55 watt-hour battery, whether it be Lunar Lake, whether it be Snapdragon X Elite versions here, you're going to get that same battery. And it's been pretty phenomenal here. I ran the PC Mark X video playback on both, and check this out. The Full HD non-touch panel on both these units, well, look at this, Snapdragon X Elite, 27 hours, 44 minutes. But I didn't think I was going to be able to top that. Well, we did here. The Lunar Lake got 28 hours and 44 minutes, exactly one more hour than that Snapdragon X Elite running the same test, which is pretty interesting, but both got pretty phenomenal battery life. Now, for those wondering about that 3K tandem OLED display, well, the Dell XPS 13 9345 Snapdragon running that display at 60 hertz, of course, 10 hours and 44 minutes. That, of course, is very similar to the one we saw in the 9340. That got 11 hours and 22 minutes, not quite as much with this 9345. But again, the tandem OLED will use more power and so forth. That's not a surprise with any OLED display. But if you want the longevity, obviously go with that Full HD Plus here with that LCD panel. And as you can see, both models, the Lunar Lake and the Snapdragon X Elite, blow away the competition here. There is no doubt about it. It's even the MacBook Air, which of course has excellent battery life, didn't do quite as well as either one of these Dell XPS 13 models here. Now, as far as the charging, they include a 60-watt power adapter. It's very compact, and of course, it does support fast charging, and of course, it connects via USB Type-C. Now, we're looking at quad speakers when it comes to the XPS 13 line, whether it be the Snapdragon, whether it be the Lunar Lake, and whether it be the Meteor Lake, the predecessor to the Lunar Lake. They all sound the same. Quad speakers, 2 tweeters, 2 woofers, 8 watts of total output in terms of the audio. And I think it's pretty good for a 13-inch laptop. Of course, we already did a comparison between the XPS 13 9345 and the 9340. So I'll just replay it here again because I didn't notice any discernible difference on the 9350. So it's pretty much the same. So let's give them a listen. All right, let's wrap it all up. And as we take a look at the pros and cons of this Lunar Lake 9350 version of the XPS 13, I will say this. Whether you go with the Snapdragon, whether you go with the Lunar Lake, you're getting the same physical attributes, the same display options, the same zero lattice keyboard, the same capacitive row, and of course the same haptic touchpad that you get in the line. It doesn't matter which one you go with. So just bear that in mind. So the only differences you're going to see are going to be in terms of performance. You'll get better single and multi-core performance with the Snapdragon version. You're going to get less multi-core performance, especially on that Lunar Lake, because you're going with less cores. You have 8 cores, 8 threads, no hyper-threading, as you know. But there is going to be better graphics on the Lunar Lake version. So that's where we're seeing a big leg up, I think, in terms of the Intel version, and you won't have any of the compatibility issues to contend with regards to x86 apps as you will have potentially on some applications with the Snapdragon X Elite version. Now, that being said, they have the same cons that I pointed out in the 9345 video. The RAM is not upgradable, no SD card reader, no HDMI, no USB-A, no dongle in the box, by the way, no haptic feedback on the capacitive row, and there's no physical escape key, no physical function row, as we talked about. So those share the same negatives, but I think overall the Dell XPS 13 is still one of the best ultra portables out there, the best looking ultra portable out there by far. I don't think there's anything close, and it just screams a premium modern look, and that to me is big. And I like the way the performance is on both versions, and especially that phenomenal battery life. Highly recommended here for 2024. No matter which way you go, you're going to get one of the best, nicest looking laptops out there.